Welcome to Mapping Innovation. Thank you, Ayesha, for joining me. I just wanted to start with your education. It's so diverse. You have a BA Honors in Economics from Harvard, MS in Operations and Research from Columbia, and a PhD in Information Systems and Innovation from the London School of Economics. Can you share with us the thought process that led you to pursue the subjects you did? Did it all happen at once, or was it because of things you were involved in?
No, I have never really thought through what I wanted to do in my life. I've just followed my interests. So I grew up in Lahore and I went to convent where my mother had gone. Then I went to Canada where my mother and grandmother had gone. And then I decided that I wanted to apply to the USA. And I was lucky to get into Harvard. And in those days, we were very concerned and still are about the fact that there is an emerging middle class, a lower middle class in Pakistan, and we wanted to democratize access to certain services. So my main interest at that time was human rights and development economics. So I studied poverty, I studied public finance. Of course, I did econometrics and math and stats. And I also then, did a lot of human rights work with Human Development Commission of Pakistan. And then I also advocated for women in jails under different laws in Rawalpindi. But after that, along the way, I fell in love with technology because I met these wonderful class fellows and they taught me that technology was kind of like art. It wasn't this very mechanical, boring thing, but it was full of creativity. And all science was an approximation to learning truth, not what I had learned, that it's always a set answer. So that's when I decided to go into operations research, because operations research is just an applied math toolkit for understanding the world. And then I did computational biology, which I loved. Then I worked on Wall Street for a long time. And, Wall Street invested a lot of money in low latency, high frequency trading systems and in technology in general. So when I saw that, my interest really grew into how does technology affect the rest of society. And that's when I got into the area of smart cities. And I applied to the London School of Economics because I wanted to go to another place. And, that was the best thing I ever did, Jehan Ara. I think along the way, we just get so engrossed in our careers that having that bit of a reset and having professors teach you about theory of information systems, it made me less naive. It made me more balanced in my approach for technology. So that's kind of my meandering route that I took. It was all driven by interest and nothing else.
Okay, now let's talk about what is AI. So tell me, AI is a buzzword and has become sort of like a celebrity, whether it's in government or in the private sector. Do we really understand what AI is and what it's capable of? It's being used everywhere by everyone. And I know you've worked with both the government and the private sector, which is why you have an insight into how they're planning to use it. And what's your role in sort of making sure they do it right?
So most companies, most governments don't understand what artificial intelligence really is. Sometimes they'll read it on the cover of a magazine, or they'll see a movie, or they'll learn that Jeff Bezos did it. Everybody gets excited. But that's, in reality, you need to first have a data strategy. You need to have a strategy for how it's going to solve specific challenges and problems. So just like in design thinking or any entrepreneurial venture, everybody needs to think like an entrepreneur and think, what is the problem I want to solve? Do I want to make e-government more efficient? Do I want to make transportation more sustainable? Or do I just want to have shorter queuing lines in hospitals, such as we've worked with some hospitals on that? Once you have a problem, then you begin to think about how artificial intelligence can improve your solution to that problem through automation, through prediction. And I have to say, more than 60% of the time, artificial intelligence can very quickly give you an advantage. Now, the question is, you can't just jump into AI. You need to have the foundations that are necessary to make AI work. And the most important foundation right now, the way AI stands, is data. So a lot of what we've started doing is working with governments, and we work with the government of Dubai. We are going to work with the government of Indonesia. We have been working with a large healthcare company in the US, largest bank in Pakistan, largest transport company in Singapore, 3 of the largest telcos in the world. We've started to organize their data. And once you organize your data and you store it in a way that's machine readable. So, you and I have been in the industry for a long time. We've done databases. These are different kinds of databases. There are different approaches to storing, processing, mining, tiers of storing. It's a new world. But what it does is it efficiently takes the data and it can mine it to give you the kinds of things that you read about in magazines. But what people do is they jump straight to the magazine and they don't realize all the other things. And at ADDO AI, we are very conservative. We are very anti-hype. These days, I feel everybody can do AI. We still find it difficult at times, but everybody claims they can do AI. Their grandmother can do AI. Everybody can do AI. But it's not perfect. And frankly, there are humans like us that work on it, so there are biases in it. But a bit of education can go a long way. So I encourage everybody to learn some basics so that you can go on this path in a more balanced and long-term sustainable manner.
What about the fear of privacy issues when so much data is being dealt with? How do you cater to that? So many people are sharing extremely sensitive data. How do you make sure it's kept private?
This is very important. This is why I'm a big believer in society getting involved in these things. Because whenever you give away your data, you are essentially, it's being stored somewhere by a corporation or by a government, and you have no idea what they're doing with it. So there are 2 things that are important. Number 1, regulation. More and more countries now have data regulations, and they're becoming much more strict about this. So you want to make sure, if you're an entrepreneur, that you're compliant with the regulation, or if you're a citizen, that you understand what your rights are. And if you look at European Union, they are very good about this because they treat data as a human right. So basically, that's actually very, very important. I am a big believer in the European way of thinking, that you should have some access to your data. You should be able to delete your data when you want to, and that no company should be allowed to, just based on algorithms, in an unexplainable manner, say that, oh, the AI decided you're not eligible for this insurance. The AI decided you're not eligible for this home loan. This is not reasonable for the average citizen to hear. So we should be able to explain to them in more understandable ways how AI and data is being used. So it's a lot about transparency, it's a lot about accountability, and it's a lot about education of every citizen. I feel really strongly about the topic of data protection and data privacy. And in particular, I feel strongly about the fact that citizens must be made aware. Because I come from a human rights background, I don't like elitism of any kind. And I find that just because you are a techie, or you know AI, or you know data, and you can throw these words around, does not mean that somebody who is not even that well educated cannot be explained and understand his or her basic rights. And so part of the thing we should do is have a society, maybe such as Pasha or other such societies, that regularly educate people about their rights and their responsibilities in an age of AI. And I would be very happy to help with that. I feel very strongly about that.
When you talk about having an AI team, whether it is at your organization or anywhere else, who are these people? Are they just technologists, or is it people with different skill sets?
That's a really good question. लोगों का ख्याल है, people think that an AI team is two data scientists and two AI folks or sitting together. Actually, there are about 7 to 8 different just technical roles, let alone the other roles you need about it. So basically, you need your obviously your data architect. Or a big data architect, by the way, is different from a general data architect. So because they're used to dealing with huge volumes of data. So sometimes we have both a data architect and a big data architect who specializes specifically in huge terabytes of data. Then you have to have your data engineers. They are the people whose only job it is to migrate data from the source to the new data lake, as it's called, that you're building, or data platform. And they're the people who, wherever data is coming from, they're the ones who make sure that it's transformed and it is in a position to be mined. Then you have data scientists and machine learning engineers. Obviously, these are the ones that do all the modeling, the statistical modeling, etc. Then you have the ML SecOps people. This is like DevOps, but specifically for machine learning. How are you constantly productionizing the machine learning models and versioning them and deploying them in an agile manner? And then, of course, you have your DevOps, you have your QA, you have your testing. But all of this is at the back end. How do you connect it with the business? For that, you need your business analysts. You sometimes even need your sociologists. We have actually done research on surveys to understand the elderly in Singapore and Japan, where we had a sociologist in our team. Because unless you know what data is important, somebody who's not a domain expert would not know that. Then you need to have, obviously, the people who do data storytelling. This is an art. I wish, even I'm not that good at it. I don't know who's good at it, but I want that person to join us. My team is becoming good at it. But it's very hard. How do you tell a persuasive story? Why does this matter? How does it make a difference? Why should you strategically move down one path? So it's a very interdisciplinary team. And the people who are in the tech part are highly specialized. So the confusion people have is they try to be software firms and now AI firms. It's actually not that easy. I wish it was, but it's not. And only being technical is never a good idea in life or in business or in education. So it needs all of those things.
Okay. So will people be replaced by machines, do you think? That's one of the fears that lots of people have, that with our AI taking over and being integrated into so much of what we do, are we going to be replaced by machines? And if yes, how long will it take?
This is a question that is so often on people's minds. And I think given that we actually put automation, AI-based automation platforms in place, I can say it replaces certain tasks. So definitely if you're doing something that's very routine, if you're checking contracts and you're finding every day it's the same thing you're doing, yes, you're getting paid for it, but it's the same thing you're doing, then it's very likely that an AI machine or a robot can replace you. And it's already happening in the legal industry. Even if you're a teacher and all you're doing is droning on the same thing, you don't make any effort to empathize with the students, you don't make any effort to create or to learn, then in South Korea, they actually have English-speaking robot teachers. So,
yes, I've heard of those.
My point is, if you are learning, if you are curious, and I have to say, young people these days are like that. Even old people, even I'm like that, because there's so much information everywhere that it's really quite lovely. It's very hard not to have a job in this new era. But if you are doing the same thing, if you are not working hard at learning new things, if you're doing routine work and just getting a paycheck, then frankly, yes, your tasks will be automated within the next 10, 20 years. And you should be aware of that for yourself and your children. and your grandchildren and give them the right advice on this.
But then with those jobs, jobs that are task driven and repetitive, okay, they'll be replaced. But new jobs will be created, right? And how should people start preparing for those new jobs?
These new jobs will be created, but some of these jobs, we don't even know what they are yet. So for example, there is this, as chatbots were created, people realized user experience was important. That doesn't, and some people are under this impression that, actually, I was meeting somebody, he said, actually, there won't be any need for programmers. There won't be any need for technologists. And usually it's a non-techie who says that. I disagree with that. That is assuming that programmers will be doing the same things that they're doing right now. Actually, when I started out building websites, which was one of the first things I started doing to earn money on the side, as an undergrad, I was actually coding in HTML. Now, very few people do that. Yes, there are some algorithms that are now being their libraries, but there's always a job because something more complicated and interesting will come along. The thing is that the way to prepare for this is, first of all, to understand where all industries are going. And all industries are getting disrupted by data and technology. You don't need to be a data scientist, but you need to work with one. And the best way that you can prepare for your future career or your future longevity is to learn some basics so that at least you can communicate with each other. And for all the techies, you need to talk to the business. So you need to stop getting your little assignment and just doing that, because you need to expand your thinking. And we have, unfortunately, our education system has always been very siloed. But to be successful in the future, you need both. And I think that is really going to be the key. What are these new jobs? I don't know. 3D printing has been around for a long time. Now it's seeing several 100% year-on-year growth in terms of designers for 3D printing and prefabrication. It's one example. And it's interesting and fun. Why wouldn't anybody do it?
Exactly. So then the education experts or the schools, universities will also have to start catering for it, which means, we always say that learning is something that has to be ongoing. So that should apply also to the universities and schools. The curriculum should change, what they're teaching should change. Isn't that something that people should be looking at? But are they? That is my fear, that they're not.
Unfortunately, I think almost the entire world's education system is broken. Nobody is ready. But you are now seeing some interesting programs like Yale and US in Singapore has a mathematical sciences program that's really good, that takes some liberal arts but also takes some statistics and probability theory and is able to combine these things. We need that, and not enough schools are doing that at the moment. But luckily there is a pressure on them now. And by the way, it is luck, because if you don't have pressures from disruption, everybody becomes complacent. So with Coursera, with edX, there is definitely this pressure to do better and do certain things. And I think that is going to improve the education system. Lekin, what should one do as a parent today? Well, as a parent today, you should really be actively involved in your children and your own re-education by looking at the different kinds of institutes and online programs that are there, and actively seeking out programs in cities. And that's the reason that my co-founder and I, Dr. Faisal, were starting an Institute of Artificial Intelligence and Computing in Lahore. And we're very excited about it because it's really applied AI. And that is our experience. Is it the only thing? No, but for the right person who wants that kind of career, it's a good choice. And the more choices people have, the better it is for them. So unfortunately, the answer is no, nobody's ready, but we're all trying to get there together.
And will this new institute be available online with its programs, or will it be restricted to just one city? Because, there are so many cities in Pakistan which could benefit from it.
It's completely going to be a hybrid system. So it will be a hub and spoke model where it will be a network with the main campus being in DHA in Lahore. And then we'll have satellite campuses. Of course, for us as techies, we can't imagine not being online. So we'll totally be in, we'll have personalized learning. We're very excited about this. This is based on, it's a separate company that we're setting up, just because we noticed even with our clients, they just didn't know. They weren't asking the right questions. They weren't picking the right technologies. And you never want to go in and just stay there forever, right? You want to empower people. That's very important to me.
Now, seeing how AI is becoming so important in all sectors, do you think that governments should actually have a minister for AI who should be, overseeing all of this and making sure the right people are involved at the right time in the right segments?
It could be.
And it's not happening anywhere at all. That's, if it is, then perhaps one can use it as a case study and say, hey, this government is doing it, why don't you?
I mean, it is happening in Dubai. I think they had the first minister of AI. Other countries are also looking at it. But data and AI are quite closely matched at the moment. So I think that one of the things that's important is that we should make sure that there is somebody who understands the value of data as a strategic asset for a country. And what that involves is that somebody is able to look at data, protect it, but also use it in a way that improves the access of citizens to services that the government is supposed to provide, including healthcare, infrastructure, transportation, education. Does that person have to be a chief technology officer, chief digital officer, chief data officer? It doesn't really matter so much as long as you're the right person. Now, who is the right person is the question. Often these are people, and if you look at it, the best chief data officers are ones that have a strong technical background, yet have a way of communication with people and business understanding of business KPIs or goals. And so in that way, they're a holistic kind of a personality, a T-shaped, I think, personality. So they're able to talk to people, and also they're able to lead their team. And I think there are few people like that at the moment in the world. People often in political positions, etc. But I think it's very important to get it right.
Now let's move on to smart cities, because that's another area that you are very involved in. So what are the benefits of smart cities, and especially are they relevant for developing economies? I know you've been working with Dubai and with Singapore on the smart cities concept. What about countries like Pakistan and other developing economies? Are they relevant for us at all? Should we be looking at it?
Yes, absolutely. When you think of a smart city, sometimes you think of something that's very futuristic, with autonomous vehicles and robots running around. And sure, in places like Singapore, if you go to the park, you'll see a robot that will come around and say hi sometimes. Or you'll see some autonomous vehicles that are being tested out here. But on the other hand, the way and I'll tell you why I like Singapore and their approach. They don't do technology just for technology's sake. Actually, about 6 years ago, the Prime Minister said, we are a smart nation where it's really a smart nation is about the joy of living, where it's about the meaning of life, a meaningful life for all citizens. And in that way, if you focus on the problems, every country has different levels of problems. And then you apply technology and data to it. Well, that's a smart city. That's a smart approach. And for Pakistan, there is humongous opportunity. Even if you just look at transportation, how to make transportation better. Even trying to understand where should you put the bus stops, or even trying to understand why, women are, if you're trying to get more people to go into the city to work, what are the best hours for that? What is the gender bias in what we have? These are all statistical analysis based on which you can actually design better infrastructure. That's smart infrastructure. On top of it, you put some sensors. Now you can track where everybody's going, and you can begin to optimize the traffic. That's smart traffic. So I think that one doesn't need to go too much in the future or be too futuristic. Every step we take is a smart step if we use data technology in a citizen-centered way. It is not smart if you're just putting in things, throwing money at it, and nobody's using it. Citizens are not happy, they're feeling disgruntled. And that is the evolution of the word of smart city, where people understand, listen, it's about the citizens. And that's why we talk about user centricity, citizen centricity. And I think absolutely there's humongous opportunity for this, no matter how poor or rich a country is.
So when you started, you said that, we should not think that technology or its applications should be just for an elite set of people. So when you talk about smart cities, when you look at a large section of the Pakistan population, how do you think we should approach the smart city concept so that it is beneficial for all? Because if we use very, very high-tech methods, then perhaps it would be beyond the understanding of some of the people who live in this country. So how should the government be approaching it? Is there any country where it has been used for people where, maybe I think 30-40% of the population is illiterate? How do we approach this and not lag behind as far as smartest cities are concerned, but use it for the benefit of the citizens and all citizens?
All citizens. I think that's a really good question. And I think, thank God for the mobile phone and telecommunications, because that is becoming the key. I mean, you've seen Facebook has invested in Jio and so have many other companies in India, because they see the power of it. Obviously, these companies see it for their commercial benefit, but they obviously bring services to the table, right? And this is regardless if you put in the right telecommunications infrastructure, regardless of whether you're in the villages or you are in the cities. The first thing that you can do is to give people access to training and education. This is why and it was such a good question that you asked, that where is your institute going to be? It's actually going to be available everywhere and as a distributed network, because that's the only way you can do it. And it's not so straightforward, I mean, even our exams, we are developing an AI-based exam monitoring system to help with this remote monitoring and remote education. So using that for telemedicine is very important. Now, let's talk about telemedicine. One thing is, aapne phone kiya, there's a doctor there, he's talking to you. Now, the Gates Foundation has also funded a very interesting little machine that's called Butterfly IQ. Okay. And what it does is it's allowed to do the ultrasound, etc. And if for cancer patients or mummies who are pregnant with their babies, somebody who's even a nurse or assistant can cycle over and do it. And two things happen. First, the AI also guides them, because historically it has the data and it can give some recommendations. And then remotely, the doctor can also give a diagnosis. This combination is important. It's not just the software and the data. The hardware plays a very important part in smart cities. Bringing down the cost of hardware to make it smaller, more powerful computationally, so that it can be further away from the central cities and still be effective. This is what will make it a smart country. That's why I love Singapore's idea of a smart nation, because it's bigger than the city, even though we're a city state here. But and that's very all-encompassing and inclusive. So I think that's just health, education. Of course, in infrastructure, you see prefabrication, which is happening much more. In Singapore, for example, 30% of government subsidized housing has to be prefabricated outside. This brings down your cost of development. It also makes it more sustainable and accurate and safer. That means कि हम पक्का मकान दे सकते हैं लोगों को. I mean, these are things. Food, then you come to food, you come to agriculture. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy, your basic security, your food, your shelter, these are very important. And how can you use, in one of our projects, we used satellite imagery and GIS to be able to predict the water inundation, to analyze and estimate the water inundation after a typhoon, so we'd know if they needed some help or not, farmers. That was just a small thing that we did, but imagine it at scale. And I know there's some great agri-tech companies working on that. Now, that kind of thing happens in Pakistan. In Singapore, where we import all of our food, we're thinking about food production in silico. So every country has its own challenges and goals, and every country uses it in its own way. But tremendous opportunity for our entrepreneurs, regardless of their age, to get into this and really make a difference in the country.
Okay, great. Now, let's turn to fintech. So with more and more fintech solutions now being tried out, young entrepreneurs really coming up with really amazing and innovative work, do you see a time when banks will become irrelevant?
I think a lot of banks are going to buy out these fintech companies. When fintech first came out, the banks were very dismissive. They thought कि इतनी छोटी सी companies हैं, but the fact is that they are now beginning to recognize that the fintech approach is correct, that a disruption is needed, that you actually need to provide capital and loans and better service to everybody, many of whom do not have access and are underbanked, as is 68% of the population and many of adult population, many of Southeast Asia and South Asia. So I don't think they'll go out of business. I think what they'll do is they'll do what all smart companies do. They'll begin to partner with them. They'll begin to invest in them. They'll begin to buy them. They'll provide the balance sheet for these fintech companies, which is also happening. Where else do you get the money to give loans and to take the risk on those loans? Guess what? It comes from the banks. So, but there may be fewer players. We may also see these fintech companies become digital banks in themselves. And of course, Pakistan and other countries are giving these digital bank licenses. Who wins at the end? The customer. The more competition there is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the more exciting thing. Finally, there's nothing. When I was working in villages in Pakistan, and we were giving microfinance loans, I was interning at Kush Foundation.
Yeah.
These women had a better business sense than all my years at Harvard taught me on how they were going to use that money and what they were going to do with it. I have enormous respect for them. I would ask every CEO or every rising person to go and spend some time, because this elitism is what makes us divorced from the reality of what people need. It makes us poorer entrepreneurs. It makes us, worse CEOs, because you don't appreciate the need. And when you don't appreciate the need, you don't appreciate the opportunity. So I think that it's a win-win. And it doesn't matter at the end if it's a bank or a fintech. As long as they use technology and data to reach more people, that's a win-win for the country.
Are there any industries that you believe won't be transformed by AI?
No, not a single. Every single industry will be transformed by AI. It's like mind-blowing once you start looking at it. From entertainment, what they're saying in Hollywood, right? That because nobody can go out and film, they're going to do more and more digital backgrounds, so they're already doing, but even characters, etc. Legal, we know it's happening. Medicine, we know it's happening. Teachers, honestly, construction, they're saying little old ladies can now be construction workers because they can, manipulate the robots. Basically, it's going to be so crazy. Why not? There definitely are nannies and daddies. I trust them more. They're more caring, about how things are put together. So I think that there's no doubt in my mind. The question then is, are you adaptive? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to working with people from all over the world? And are you, willing to go out of your comfort zone? I think that's the important thing. And for me, my luckiest break has always been the team that has come around me and kind of done 10 times more better work than me and made me look good. It made the company look good. So finding the right people is more important than finding the right AI, in my opinion. And once you do that, then you can write the AI together and benefit from it.
Do you think COVID has had a role to play in the automation happening much faster than it would have otherwise? And with all sorts of organizations and government not interested in technology as much as they are now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People are much more interested because it's not even using AI. They were not even using digital.
Yes.
Very like old school. So at least now they're thinking, acha, we should put something together and we should start to digitize so that we can reach citizens, or we can give services, or we can work together in a way that doesn't force us physically to be together. And that is digitization. Digitization is when you can do things and make things happen in a digital format, which many people who are used to paperwork and long processes, they were not used to, and it was comfortable for them. We are seeing that companies such as ours, even though there's a challenge for everybody because of the general economy gets a bit depressed, but this is a great opportunity to learn these things, and actually they are more resilient if you are in the digitization or AI or data field.
Would it be possible for you to talk about a few of the case studies, the work that you've done in different areas and what you've learned from it? Because that could give people ideas as to what the challenges would be and what the benefits.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example how we think about something. So there's one of the largest telcos in Asia. And I'll give you a small example of what we did for them, because we're working on many projects for them. They wanted to, they got a lot of complaints from their business users about major issues in their services. So it could be a box was not working, or there's an outage, or there's something wrong with the pole or the cable, or maybe the connection with the customer. And there was dissatisfaction amongst the customers, and it was taking a long time to resolve these things. So the goal was, how can we have faster resolution of these incidents so that our customers can get back to work, because they're big offices and they are more satisfied with our service. This is very specific, by the way, and that's a key. Now you get more specific. Then you say, okay, how can we measure these goals? Well, you measure them by measuring the number of minutes it takes to resolve something. You measure it by the number of minutes it takes to return the answer to somebody. You take, and you might have a net promoter score or something like that. The reason I start with the business problem and measurable business goals is because that's the only way to do AI. After that, we said, all right, all your emails, complaints, phone calls are coming in. You have many people sitting here. They're all answering the phones. They're not techies, they're not engineers, they're just writing it down. They're customer service people. How about our AI? We understand what the complaint is, and then we categorize the complaint ourselves because we have all this historical data. So then we said, okay, this is a box problem, this is that kind of problem, this is X, Y problem, and then we send it to the right engineer, because we know the engineers who have successfully worked on those problems. Now the engineer goes to the site and he's trying to figure it out. We recommend to the engineer we predict what the problem could have been, and then we give him a recommendation on the best solution for it. So we say, why don't you try this? And he does, and we tell him to do something else. What that does is it shortens the time, and it's automation plus a human being working together, right? Now, as a result of that, they were able to lower their cost of manual labor. People who are just doing routine work like reading emails and putting keywords in, they were able to reduce the time to resolution because the right engineer was being sent and he was getting further assistance from the AI. And they were able to measure that the customers were happier in the emails and conversations that were happening. So for this, we created a data lake, like a small data platform for them, where we had to mine all the historical emails that had come in and what happened to them. We had to gather all these emails, take it out of different systems, and analyze where did they go, how were they resolved, and if they were resolved correctly, we used that sequence to actually be able to categorize and recommend resolutions to it. Now, this was very successful because they really, it became kind of a hit in the company and they started doing more things after that. So that's an example of a successful case.
Right.
But I think it's always good to have an example of an unsuccessful case too.
Yes, absolutely.
And like any entrepreneur, I have many unsuccessful cases, not to mention many failed startups. So another case was when we were trying to do it for a government, and we tried to say you should kind of, give your citizens more personalized service. But they didn't have any data for it. So we tried to simulate it. So we started to say, when somebody is actually looking for a certain electricity or getting a certain bill, you can recommend to them how they can save given the consumption patterns of other people. Because everybody wants a lower electricity bill, everybody wants to know how to save. So that POC kind of worked, but when we tried to scale it on a production level for the country, they were resistant to the idea of creating a data lake, which is this new concept where you can store all your unstructured and structured data in a way that machine learning can be applied to. They were still in that old school, I have a database now, and there was a lot of politics involved. So as a result, you had a pilot that never scaled. This is a very typical problem. You have people, they do a pilot here, a pilot there, a pilot there, and then pretty soon you're littered with pilots and you have nothing concrete. And now companies are moving away from that. Now they come to us and they say, we want the data platform. Tell us what our AI strategies should be. And this is pretty much something that we're doing for one of the largest healthcare networks in the US. We analyzed their current data architecture. We recommended a future architecture. We gave them a roadmap, and now we're going to tell them how to implement it and hopefully implement it with them so that they can have shorter lines in emergency rooms, so that when somebody comes in to get a diagnosis, they already have some preventative recommendations that the doctor can share with them and that they can do at home. So that the experience of the customer as he goes from one clinic to another, all the information is already there and it's much more personalized. These are so that your resource allocation, so that you know which day in the year there might be more issues with children getting sick or because of the flu or other things, and you can recommend how many people should be, how many doctors, radiologists, nurses should be in a particular facility. These are real benefits, measurable benefits that you can do with the right strategy. And the good thing is, once you have the data platform, then it's a gift that keeps on giving, because you can keep doing more and more AI models on it. So that's kind of where we see the world going now, is a emphasis on understanding and exploring data in a way that allows you to run AI on it, and then concrete benefits. That's the key, not just like castles in the sky approach.
What about your work with the SMRT? I thought that was very interesting, the concept. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so that's based actually on my PhD. My PhD is on smart cities transportation. And the idea was that for any given person, how can we, and my case study was based on Germany. And the idea was, how can you reduce private car ownership and still make it very easy for people to get from location A to B. Usually public transport, you have to go to the station, it drops you off at another station. Then you have to hail a cab or get something else. And most people, that's when they don't want to deal with the garmi and sardi and everything else. So the idea was that, can you have different kinds of mobility options, whether it's a scooter, a cycle, a rickshaw, a car, a train, a bus, all on one app. And then for the consumer, they just want to say, I want to go from point A to point B, and it will tell them, it will automatically book the whole trip for them, so that it will book the taxi for them, and it will take them to the train station where their ticket will already be booked. They just have to take their phone and tap, tap, tap everywhere. And then they can book a scooter and it's already booked and they can go to their class. Now, over time, it can be personalized to them. You may say, I want to be more green, or make sure I walk 5 miles every 2 days, or I want to be the least cost option, or the least waiting time. Make sure that my bus is reserved and I always want a window seat, and you can go crazy with that. But at the end of the day, the point is that the consumer is relaxed and is certain that his or her trip will happen, and he's booked the whole thing. It's like getting into a plane. You know, you booked it, you'll get in the plane, it'll get you to the next stop. But in a city, we have, it's multimodal. Sometimes you need more than one type of transportation. But building that sounds good in front. It's very easy for the customer. At the back, you have to integrate all of these transport systems. So you build a transport like Amazon in a way, you know, Alibaba, where it's a marketplace and they all need to be there. And you need to actually offer, they need to be able, you need to stitch together those things. So that was what we did. We integrated for this company. They actually spun it out as a innovative company. It became such a good project for them. And then Toyota invested in it, and Enterprise Development Board of Singapore invested in EDB. That we integrated these different bike sharing and scooter sharing and taxi and autonomous vehicle companies, so that it would be very easy for the customer to have this offering. And then they started adding discounts and insurance and all kinds of things to it as well. So that was the idea behind it, kind of multimodal, seamless transportation.
Terrific. That's very interesting. Now tell us a little bit about your volunteer initiatives. I'm really interested in the 21C Girls and Empower, these things that you've done. Why did you do it, and how interesting was it? How many people you got involved, and how we can maybe replicate it elsewhere?
Thank you so much for asking about that. I started 21st Century Girls, I think about 6 years ago. I was at a hackathon for kids. And I was, you know, the kids were making these little robots with electronics. So this girl came and she was very cute and she started making it, and she was actually really talented. So she was making it quite quickly. But her mother came and kind of hushed her away and put the son in front of me. And she said, yeah, my daughter is not interested. And the son, he was a very sweet kid, but he wasn't as good as his sister. And then he started making it. And she was, you know, she had little tears in her eyes. And I couldn't believe it. I think something really struck me about the cultural bias in Asia at that time. And after a while, her grandmother bought her back. And there's nothing like grandmothers in the world, I tell you. Her grandmother bought her back, and both brother and sister then did it, and they were happy. But it played on my mind, and I said, you know, I'm also, you know this, women, at least our generation, there are fewer techies. And there's a male bias. So I started 21st Century Girls to create free courses for girls in Singapore to learn coding, to learn AI, at least to be 50% of the class, so that they were encouraged. And we gave them a lot of role models and examples of other girls who were techies as well. So then our company did a partnership with Google and with Saturday Kids, and we have taught thousands of kids in Singapore the basics of coding, and the kids are just great. I mean, they're just excited and they have fun and they're learning. And then after that, I decided I wanted to go a little bit up. Like this program is from 6 to 12. I wanted to do the teens. So then I started with Nanyang Polytechnic, the Empower program, where we started teaching girls the basics of AI. And when we surveyed the girls before the first batch, now, mashallah, we're running our fourth batch, they said, you know, we don't think we'll do as well in this world of AI. The boys will probably do better. They had no reason why they felt that way. They just felt. Because they said, we don't know tech, we don't understand this. So then, over the course, which is just 2-3 hours every Saturday for 10 weeks, they learned the basics of AI, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, some Python, and then they began to do some projects. And then they had a final project stage that they did. They always present to everybody. And they were so full of confidence. You see, you don't need to be a genius to do this stuff. You just need a team, you need a good instructor, and you need an interesting project. And girls especially like projects. They like to know why something's happening. And then they'll be really good. And then they, at least I've seen with my own daughter, with myself, we need to know the whole picture, then we'll go into it.
And what impact it's going to have, right? Yeah. Otherwise, we're not interested in doing it.
Exactly. And I'm not saying boys are not, but boys will still, they'll be able to still do it. But we need
sometimes they're just excited by the technology and they're not really, which is also okay, but
that's also really good. But once you identify what inspires somebody, then you realize that then you have opened up their potential and their interest. And the survey we took afterward, they were like, we're so confident we'll do better than everybody else, basically. So it made a huge difference to them. And I didn't do much, to be honest. They're the ones who learn. They're the ones who get up on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock and show up for 3 hours. It's a non-credit course. The lecturers at Neon Poly do it. They get up and go. And I just go in once in a while and they do an incredible job. And even on the coding, it's the Saturday kids teachers. They go in, the kids are great. They have volunteers, thousands of volunteers who are doing it. So I do it, but I'm kind of a gadfly. I put things together, and then I'm very lucky. And it's the same at my team also. I'm lucky that the right people come together and just push it forward, basically.
No, but you're the spark. Somebody has to excite them, right?
I'm very excited.
And then yes, people get it. You're so passionate, so excited about innovation, about technology. What innovation are you most excited about right now?
The innovation I'm most excited about is, and we only have one product at ADDO, is education. So in education, we are building our first platform. There's a very specific problem facing the education industry right now. They're learning management systems. But you can learn, but how do you prevent cheating in an exam? Taking exams is, children and everybody studies hard for it. And then you want an exam that doesn't have bias, doesn't have corruption, doesn't have cheating. So we're building a platform, and it's already being used at Information Technology University in Pakistan and some schools, where you have a combination of live proctors and you have artificial intelligence that's picking up on any, if there's anybody else sitting next to you, or any noise if you're getting help, or if your eyes are going and you're looking at paper. So we're experimenting with these things and really trying to provide a trusted environment for people to, hopefully with good exams that critically evaluate their thinking, give an opportunity for people to really move up the social ladder, whether it is job interviews or admission tests or just any kind of certification or test. Because I feel education is the ultimate driver of social mobility, and everybody's right. And that's why I love technology. Jehan Ara, you know this. In technology, whether your father has a BMW or whether he has a cycle, whether you live in a mansion or you live in a village hut, doesn't matter. You come in, you either get it right or wrong, you work with your team, it either compiles or it doesn't compile. And the meritocracy of it, I love it. And really, everybody has out-of-the-box ideas. Nobody's born with a silver spoon of creativity or genius. And so that's why I like my field a lot. And I think that unbiased exams, ethically taken tests that are, leaving aside, I hope they're well-designed tests, are very, very important for this.
Okay, so you've done some fascinating things, in the area of smart cities, AI, Fintech. What's the next big thing for Dr. Ayesha Khanna?
No, I think this is it. I mean, ADDO AI, I love my company. 90% of our folks are in Lahore. Such a great team. I love the work we're doing in healthcare. I love the work we're doing in education. It's just, obviously there are a lot of highs and lows being an entrepreneur. It just comes with it. But I think that having some great folks around you, some great people that you're trying to help, I think this is it. I'm doing what I love to do, and hopefully I can build some more momentum around this and continue to do some good work. That would make me very happy.
Okay, if there's any advice, last question, if there's any advice you could give to the 10-year-old Ayesha Khanna, what would it be?
I would say that, don't doubt yourself that much. Don't double guess yourself. I should have from the beginning not tried to always take, I should have become an entrepreneur sooner, I think, instead of going the route of trying to do it alone as an individual consultant or trying to work but never being satisfied. I should have just bitten the bullet. But I think at that time, I would not have been successful because I didn't appreciate teamwork. So I think that maybe find the right partners, find the right team. Actually, that's the best advice I could give myself. And prioritize that. That's more important than how intelligent they are, how much they've accomplished, if they have the right values and you click. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ayesha. Really nice talking to you, and hope after this craziness is over that we can get together, have a chat over a cup of coffee, either in Singapore or here.
I would love to. I'm such a big fan of yours. I was so excited when I got your email. Like, I'm going to be interviewed by Jehan Ara. Like, I've made it.
Thank you so much. I know you're doing so many things that finding the time sometimes is really difficult, but I'm glad you made it.
Thank you, Jehan Ara. Take care. Thank you again.
Take care. Have a good day. Bye.